The steady, deep hum of the ISS Pioneer was a sound Kim Jae-hyun had learned to ignore. It was the sound of silence here, 2 light-years from anything familiar. He pushed his cleaning cart slowly down the corridor, the wheels squeaking a quiet protest. The bright lights of the main lab were ahead. He could hear the sharp, confident voice of lead researcher Park So-young even through the closed door he entered, keeping to the edges. The science team was gathered around the main monitor, their backs to him. On the screen was the creature. It was large, nearly 2 meters tall even in a crouch. A hard, dark shell covered its body, like polished stone. It had several limbs, some ending in sharp-looking claws, others in finer, almost delicate-looking digits. Its face had no clear nose or mouth, just a series of flexible ridges. But its eyes, 2 large, dark orbs, were unmistakable. Right now, they seemed to burn with a dark light as Jae-hyun watched. The creature lunged at the reinforced clear wall of its enclosure. A heavy, dull thud vibrated through the floor. It made a sound, a low, grating rasp that raised the hairs on Jae-hyun's neck. As you can see, So-young said, pointing at the data on a side screen. Physically formidable. Brain structure is complex but chaotic. No organized language centers. No response to standard communication pulses. The creature threw itself against the wall again. A security officer, Chief Lee Miho, crossed his arms. It's trying to get out. Seems pretty clear on that goal. An instinct, So-young corrected. Like an insect hitting a window. It sees movement, it attacks. Hears sound, it attacks. Our scans show its reactions are pure threat response. She turned to the team. Her face was serious, her posture perfect. The data is consistent. This is not a sentient being. It is a sophisticated animal. Predator. Possibly a scavenger from that debris field we found it in. Jae-hyun quietly wiped down an empty work table. He looked at the creature, not at the scans. He saw the way its head tilted just before it charged. It wasn't just hurling itself randomly. It was aiming for the same lower section of the wall each time. We will proceed with the standard classification, So-young announced. K-class entity. Non-sentient. A biological hazard. We will continue stress tests to map its instinctual limits. A junior technician, Choi Yuna, spoke softly. The stress tests, the noise and lights we use, they seem to cause it pain. Discomfort, So-young said firmly. A reactive pain response. Important data. She gave the order. Begin the high-frequency sequence. A sharp, whining sound filled the lab. Everyone winced. On the screen, the creature froze. Then it shrieked, a horrible, scraping sound, and began to thrash wildly, slamming its body against every surface of its prison. The team watched, some with clinical interest, some with unease. Jae-hyun stopped cleaning. He watched the creature's wild movements, but he also watched the pulsing blue light on the wall of the lab, the indicator for the coolant system. It flashed in a steady rhythm. Each time the creature's thrashing brought it near that side of the enclosure, its movements slowed, just for a second. Its head turned slightly toward the light. The sound stopped. The creature collapsed into a heap, its sides heaving. The team began to talk, to note down observations. Violent reaction to auditory stimulus. Zero adaptive behavior. Jae-hyun finished his work and pushed his cart out. His shift was over, but he didn't go to the crew quarters. He went to a small, dark observation room that looked directly into the creature's enclosure. It was empty. He sat alone in the dim glow of the status lights. The creature was still. It looked broken. Then slowly it lifted its head. Those dark eyes looked not at the main observation window where the scientists had been, but directly at the smaller, darker window where Jae-hyun sat. Couldn't possibly see him, but it was looking. Jae-hyun saw the pattern now. The rages always started after the high-frequency tests or the flashing red alert lights. They always calmed, just a little, when the steady blue coolant light was in its view. This wasn't a mindless beast. This was a creature being tortured by its environment, reacting to the torture. It was trying to escape the bad things and reach the calm, steady thing. That wasn't savagery. That was sense. He leaned forward. The creature continued to look into the darkness, its head tilted in what Jae-hyun could only call a question. For the first time, Jae-hyun didn't see a monster. He saw a prisoner, confused and in pain, surrounded by beings who called it stupid because it did not speak their language. He made a decision then, a small one. Tomorrow he would watch more closely. He would not see the K-class entity. He would see the student trapped inside the savage. The next day, Jae-hyun's routine was the same. Push the cart. Clean the surfaces. Stay quiet. But his attention was fixed on the enclosure. The creature was calm now, sitting in a corner. Its long, fine-boned limbs were moving slowly, touching the floor in a repeated pattern.
Top.
Slide.
Top.
It was not random. During a break, Soyoung was in her office. The main lab was quiet, only Yuna running tests on a console. Jae-hyun gathered his courage. He approached Yuna. She was younger than Soyoung, with a kind face that often showed worry. The creature, Jae-hyun began softly. It was calm last night. After the blue light from the coolant system was the only light on. Yuna looked up, surprised the quiet cleaner was speaking to her. The coolant light? That's just a status indicator. It pulses in a steady rhythm, Jae-hyun said. All the other tests use chaotic lights and sounds. The creature reacts to chaos with chaos. But the steady light, it seems to calm it. Maybe it finds the pattern familiar or peaceful. Yuna considered this. She looked at the creature. You've been watching it? I clean in here. I see what happens before and after the tests. He hesitated. I don't think it's mindless. I think it's stressed. Yuna bit her lip. Soyoung Yuni is very sure of the data. The brain scans? Scans show what is happening, Jae-hyun said, his voice still quiet but firm. They don't show why it is happening. What if the stress is causing the chaos in the scans? Before Yuna could answer, Soyoung's sharp footsteps echoed in the lab. She looked at Jae-hyun with clear disapproval.
Kim Jae-hyun-si?
Is there a problem with your duties? No, lead researcher, he said, bowing his head slightly. I was just sharing an observation. Your observations on cleaning supplies are welcome, Soyoung said coolly. Observations on xenobiological specimens should be left to the experts. The data is clear. The entity is reactive, not cognitive. It does not learn. It only responds. Now, please return to your work. Jae-hyun went back to his cart. But he saw Yuna give him a small, almost invisible nod. It was not support, but it was not rejection either. Later, when Soyoung and most of the team were at a meeting, Jae-hyun acted. Yuna was at her station. He approached the main console near the enclosure. He knew he did not have access. But Yuna, after a moment's tense thought, reached over and typed in a code. Low-level diagnostic lights only, she whispered. 5 minutes. This was his chance. Jae-hyun called up a simple program on the screen, a basic pattern test used for equipment, not life forms. He set it to display on a small monitor that faced into the creature's room. On the monitor, a single red circle appeared. The creature, which had been still, instantly turned its head. His whole body went tense. It let out a low hiss. Jae-hyun quickly changed the display. The red circle vanished. In its place, a soft blue square appeared, pulsing gently at the same slow, steady rate as the coolant light. The creature froze. The tension drained from its body. It uncurled slightly. It took one slow, careful step toward the monitor. Then another. It stopped a meter away, its dark eyes fixed on the blue square. One of its finer limbs rose. It did not strike the glass. Instead, it stretched out a single, claw-tipped digit and touched the glass exactly where the blue light glowed. Jae-hyun's heart beat fast. He changed the display again. The blue square vanished. A yellow triangle appeared on the other side of the screen. The creature made a soft clicking sound. It looked from the empty space where the blue square had been to the new yellow shape. It seemed confused. It did not move toward the yellow triangle. It tapped the glass again where the blue square had been, as if asking for it back. Pattern recognition, preference, memory. This was not a threat response. This was interaction. Jaehyun brought the blue square back, right where the creature had touched. The creature made a different sound, a softer click. It settled onto its limbs, watching the light pulse. It looked calm. It looked focused. From her station, Yuna watched, her eyes wide. She said nothing, but she did not stop him. The 5 minutes ended. The screen went dark. The creature stared at the empty monitor. Then it slowly turned its head and looked directly at Jaehyun through the observation window. In that moment, Jaehyun felt a connection, clear and solid as a bridge. This was no insect hitting a window. This was an intelligence, locked in a box, screaming in a language no one understood. And he had just spoken its first word back to it. The word was a steady, calm, blue light. The quiet in the lab felt heavy now. Jaehyun went through his cleaning tasks, but his mind was with the creature. He replayed the moment it had touched the glass. That had not been an attack. It had been a point, a question. He needed to prove it. That he spent his off shift in his small cabin, looking at his personal tablet. He had no access to complex science programs, but he had other things. He had games, puzzles, and he had chess. Chess was a problem he understood. It was all about seeing patterns, thinking ahead, understanding the rules of a silent world. It was a language without words. The next morning, he waited for his moment. Soyoung was giving a remote briefing to Mission Command. Her voice was confident in her office. The entity remains classified as non-sentient. All data supports a reactive, instinct-driven profile. Miho, the security chief, was standing near the enclosure, drinking coffee. He looked tired. He watched the creature, which was sitting motionless again. "Doesn't do much when you're not poking it, does it?" he said to Yuna. "It seems dormant." Yuna agreed softly, glancing at Jaehyun. This was the time. Jaehyun finished cleaning a console and, instead of leaving, he pulled his personal tablet from his pocket. He stood near the observation window, but not too close. He opened a simple drawing app. He drew a large red circle on the screen, then held it up to the glass. The creature's head snapped up. It let out a low warning rasp. It did not like red. Jaehyun quickly erased it. He drew a blue square. He held it up. The creature shifted. It moved closer. It made the soft clicking sound. It recognized the shape. It was waiting. Jaehyun took a deep breath. This was the test. He drew a sequence. Blue square. Then, next to it, a green triangle. Then he erased the blue square. He pointed at the green triangle, then back to the empty space where the blue square had been. The creature stared. His head tilted. It looked from the tablet to Jaehyun's face. Minutes passed. Jaehyun's arm began to ache. He thought he had failed. Then the creature moved. It dipped one of its fine claws into a small dish of thick, paste-like food in its enclosure. With a slow, deliberate movement, it walked to the glass. It raised its claw. It did not strike. Pressed the drop of paste onto the glass, making a small, sticky mark. It made the mark right next to Jaehyun's drawn green triangle. Then it pointed its claw back to Jaehyun's tablet, to the empty space. It had not just recognized the pattern. It had participated. It had placed a mark of its own. Jaehyun felt a jolt of pure excitement. He nodded vigorously at the creature. "Yes," he whispered. "Good. That's it." From across the room, Miho put his coffee down. He had seen it. "What was that?" he asked, walking over. Before Jaehyun could answer, Soyoung's office door hissed open. She strode out, her briefing finished. She saw the three of them at the window. Jaehyun with his tablet, Miho looking curious, Yuna watching nervously. She saw the sticky mark on the glass. "What is going on here?" Her voice was like ice. "The cleaner was showing it some pictures," Miho said, his tone neutral. "The thing made a mark." Soyoung's eyes narrowed at Jaehyun. You are conducting unsanctioned interactions with a classified specimen. With your personal device? This is a massive breach of protocol." She turned to Yuna. "Did you permit this?" Yuna looked down, her face pale. "It was my action," Jaehyun said, his voice steady. The entity recognized the pattern. It responded. It communicated. It made a mess. Soyoung snapped. That is not communication. That is contamination. It is a conditioned response, like an animal expecting food. She pointed a finger at Jaehyun. Your access to this lab is revoked. You are confined to your quarters pending disciplinary review. Your foolishness could have endangered this entire mission. Jaehyun did not argue. He put his tablet away. As Miho escorted him out, Jaehyun looked back at the enclosure. The creature was watching him leave. It raised the same claw it had used to make the mark. It did not tap the glass. It simply held it up, as if in a wave or a question. Its dark eyes followed him until the lab doors closed in his quiet quarters. Jaehyun sat on his bunk. He was not thinking about the disciplinary review. He was thinking about the creature, now alone again, with no one who understood its silent language. He had shown it a pattern and it had shown him one back. That was a conversation, and Soyoung had just ended it. The feeling in his chest was not fear. It was a cold, hard determination. He had to find another way to talk to it. The walls of his quarters felt very close. Jaehyun had nothing to do but think. He thought about patterns. He thought about the game of chess. The creature understood sequences. It understood symbols. Chess was a world built entirely from those things. It was a silent battle of minds, a conversation made of possible futures. Soyoung would be finishing her final report. She would recommend the creature be sedated, shipped off to some high-security lab forever, studied like a dangerous bug. He had no access to the lab, but he had seen Yuna's face. She was unsure. And Miho had looked curious, not angry. He sat at his small desk and opened his personal tablet. He still had limited access to the ship's network for messages and basic entertainment. He could not control anything in the lab. But he remembered something. The main display screen in the creature's enclosure was on a separate, low-priority system. It was used to show status information or simple test patterns. The security on it was not strong. It was never meant to be important. Jaehyun began to work. He was not a hacker, but he understood systems. He wrote a very small, simple program. It would do one thing: ask the main lab computer for a single, specific image file and then display it. He masked the request to look like a routine diagnostic. It was a risk. If he was caught, he would be in more trouble. But the creature's dark, intelligent eyes were in his mind. Late that night, ship time, when the lab would be empty on minimal lighting, he executed the program that in the enclosure. The large wall monitor flickered to life. The creature, which had been sitting in a corner, immediately stood up. It watched the screen. A chessboard appeared. It was simple black and white squares. In the center of the board, a single white pawn glowed softly. Jaehyun, from his quarters, watched through a low-security maintenance camera feed. His breath was tight in his chest. The creature approached the screen, touched the glass where the pawn was. It made a soft, inquiring click. Jaehyun used his tablet. He made the pawn move forward one square. The creature jerked back, surprised. Then it leaned in. It watched the empty square where the pawn had been. It looked at the new square where the pawn sat now. It understood movement. It understood change. Jaehyun moved the pawn again, 2 squares forward this time, showing its opening move. The creature was utterly still, focused only on the board. Its limbs were tucked close. This was not a threat posture. This was a study posture. Minutes ticked by. The creature did nothing but watch the single pawn on the giant board. Then, it moved. It went to its food dish. It gathered a small amount of the thick paste. It returned to the screen. With great care, it pressed the paste onto the glass. It made a mark, not a random one. It made a small, white, pawn-shaped smudge on the square directly in front of Jaehyun's digital pawn. It was mimicking the move. It was placing its own piece. Jaehyun felt a huge smile break across his face. He quickly made his digital pawn move forward one more time, capturing the imaginary spot where the creature's paste pawn Saturday. The creature stared. It looked at its own paste mark. It looked at the digital pawn that had taken it. It made a low, thoughtful hum. It reached out and gently smeared the paste mark away, erasing its captured piece. It understood. It understood the game. It understood loss.it, then did something extraordinary. It went back to its food dish. It gathered more paste. It returned to the screen. This time it did not make a pawn. It made a different mark, a longer, straight smear. It placed this new mark 2 squares away from Jaehyun's pawn, on the diagonal. It was not copying anymore. It was suggesting. It was setting up a threat. It had understood the rules and was already trying to use them. Jaehyun laughed, a short, surprised sound in his quiet room. In 3 moves, the creature had gone from student to strategist. It was not just learning the rules. It was thinking about how to win. He looked at the board, at the creature's clever paste mark. He moved his digital pawn to take the offered challenge. The game, silent and strange and wonderful, had begun. Across the silent ship, 2 minds were talking in a language of squares and possibilities. No one else knew, but the bridge had been built. 72 hours. For 3 days, the Pioneer followed its normal routine. Lead researcher Soyoung worked on her final report. She wrote about instinct and hazard classifications. She never looked at the creature's enclosure during the quiet night shifts. She saw what she expected to see: a quiet, dormant animal. She did not see the conversation happening on the wall. Every night, Jaehyun worked from his quarters. He taught the creature chess. He did not just show it moves. He showed it ideas. He displayed a knight and moved it in its L shape. The creature watched, unblinking. The next night, Jaehyun set up a simple puzzle: a knight protecting a pawn. The creature, using its paste, placed its own mark to threaten the knight. It had understood the unique movement. He showed it the rook, moving in straight lines. He showed it the bishop, moving on diagonals. The creature learned each piece faster than the last. Its brain, called chaotic by Soyoung scans, was made for this. It was a mind built to see the geometry of space, the patterns of movement and threat. Yuna covered for him. She noticed the new, careful paste marks on the enclosure glass each morning. She quietly cleaned them before Soyoung arrived, but she did not stop the nighttime lessons. She began leaving a small, extra portion of paste-like food in the dish, saying it was for nutritional stability. Miho saw her do it. He said nothing, but his nightly security checks of the lab became longer. He would stand in the shadows, watching the creature stare at the chessboard on the screen, thinking. He saw intelligence in that stillness. On the 3rd night, Jaehyun introduced the king and queen. He showed the queen's power, moving her across the board. The creature followed the path with a claw tip on the glass. Then Jaehyun set up a real game. He played white. The creature played with its paste marks as black.it was a slow, silent game. Jaehyun would make a move on his tablet, and the image would update on the wall screen. The creature would think. Its body would become completely motionless, only its dark eyes moving across the board. Then it would move, placing its sticky piece with deliberate care. It did not play like a computer. It did not play like a beginner. Played with a strange, patient style. It would sacrifice a pastemark bishop to gain a better position. It was thinking ahead. Jaehyun found himself sweating. He was a good player, but he had to concentrate hard. The creature was relentless. In the middle of their second game, the creature made a move that shocked him. It moved a pastemark knight to a square that seemed useless. Jaehyun couldn't see the threat. He moved his queen forward, attacking. The creature responded immediately. It moved a rook it had placed quietly in the corner. The move revealed a trap. The creature's seemingly pointless knight now covered a key square. Jaehyun's queen was threatened from 2 directions. It was a fork, a classic, beautiful chess tactic. The creature had not just learned the rules. It had invented strategy. Jaehyun leaned back in his chair, stunned. He looked at the board, then at the creature on the camera feed. The creature was looking directly into the camera lens, as if it knew Jaehyun was there. It made a soft, clicking sound. It was not a sound of rage. It sounded like satisfaction. He had taught it the pieces in 3 days. And in those 3 days, it had become a player. It had moved from learning the alphabet to writing a clever sentence. The proof was there on the glass, in smears of food, in a perfect tactical move. In the lab, Miho watched from the doorway. He saw the creature's trap on the board. He let out a low whistle of respect he couldn't hold back. This was no animal. This was a mind. A sharp, deep, strategic mind that had been sitting in a box, called stupid because it didn't scream in a way they understood. The final report from Soyoung was due in the morning. It would recommend the creature be sedated forever. But in the quiet heart of the night, a silent game of chess had just proven that report was wrong. The only question was if anyone would look at the board before it was too late. The morning meeting felt like a funeral. The senior crew and science team were gathered in the lab. Soyoung stood straight, her tablet in hand. On the main monitor behind her was her final report. The title was clear: Recommendation for Permanent Sedation and Transport of K-Class Entity. The data is conclusive, Soyoung said, her voice smooth and sure. No adaptive learning. No communication. Only base reaction to stimuli. The entity represents a significant biological hazard. This transport while conscious is an unacceptable risk. I recommend we begin the sedation protocol today. Jaehyun was there. He had been ordered to attend, likely to be made an example of. He stood near the back, next to Miho. The security chief's face was hard to read. Yuna looked at the floor, her hands clasped tightly. Soyoung continued. The process is simple and humane. It will be placed in a dormant state for the journey to the central research facility. Jaehyun's heart hammered against his ribs. He looked at the enclosure. The creature was calm, watching them all. It had cleaned most of the paste marks from the glass, but a few faint smears remained near the bottom. It knew something was wrong. He could see it in the way it held its body, tight and ready. He had to speak. He had to do something. As Soyoung finished, he stepped forward. Lead researcher. Every eye turned to him. Soyoung's look was cold. You have no standing in this discussion. Kim Jaehyun SSI. I ask for one final test, Jaehyun said. His voice louder than he meant it to be. A test of cognition, not reaction. We have done all tests, Soyoung snapped. Miho cleared his throat. What kind of test? He asked. His tone was neutral, but he was looking at Jaehyun, not Soyoung. Jaehyun took a breath. A game. Puzzle it has learned. If it fails, you proceed. If it passes, you have to reconsider. Soyoung laughed. A short, sharp sound. A game? This is a scientific vessel, not a playground. It is a test of spatial reasoning, pattern recognition, and strategic foresight, Jaehyun said, repeating words from his old psychology studies. Everything you say it lacks. A tense silence filled the room. The other scientists looked uneasy. Miho nodded slowly. It's a simple request. Let's see. What do we have to lose? Soyoung saw the crew's hesitation. She could not look unreasonable in front of everyone. Fine, she said tightly. 5 minutes. You will fail, and then you will be confined until we reach port. Jaehyun walked to the main console. Yuna was already there. Without a word, she entered her code and pulled up the program he had used. The large screen in the enclosure glowed to life. A chessboard appeared. It was a mid-game puzzle Jaehyun had set up earlier. White, played by the computer, was in a strong position. Black, which would be the creature, was in trouble. But there was a sequence. A checkmate in 3 moves for Black. It was difficult. It required seeing the board not as pieces, but as lines of force. What is this? Soyoung asked, disgusted. The puzzle is for Black to find the winning path, Jaehyun said. He looked at the creature. It is Black's turn. The creature was already at the glass. His whole attention was on the board. The room was utterly silent. The creature did not move. It studied. Its eyes flicked from piece to piece. 1 minute passed. 2. Soyoung smirked. As expected. No comprensión. Time is up. Wait, Miho said. His eyes fixed on the creature. On the screen, a white queen threatened the black king. The creature looked from the queen to its own pieces. It had a rook and a bishop left. It needed to use them together. Then it moved. It raised a claw and pointed, not at its own pieces, pointed at the white queen on the screen. Then it dragged its claw slowly through the air. moving in a diagonal line across the glass, showing a path. The path ended on a square occupied by its own bishop. It was indicating the bishop should capture the queen. A few scientists gasped. It was the correct, brilliant, sacrificial first move. The creature was not done. It then pointed to its rook, trapped in the corner. It moved its claw in a straight line down the board, stopping right next to the white king. The second move. Finally, it pointed to its remaining bishop. It moved its claw in a short, final diagonal, locking the white king in place. Checkmate.it had not just found the moves. It had visualized and communicated the entire three-step sequence without touching a single piece of its own. It had solved the problem perfectly. The room was dead silent. Soyoung's face was white. Her report was on the screen behind her, its conclusions now looking foolish and blind. The creature looked at them all. Then, slowly, deliberately, it walked to the screen. It reached out with one fine claw, tapped the image of the white king. Then, with a gentle push, it used its claw to tip the white king over on its side on the screen. It laid the king down, the universal sign of surrender, of defeat. It turned from the screen and looked straight at Soyoung. It made no sound. It just looked. The truth was in the air, heavy and undeniable. This was not an animal. This was a mind that had just spoken in the clearest possible terms, using a human game of logic and war. Jaehyun finally breathed. He looked at Soyoung, at her shattered certainty. He said softly, into the quiet, "It was never a fight. It was lonely." Miho was the first to move. He stepped toward Soyoung. "Lead researcher," he said, his voice formal and firm. "I am suspending your recommendation. This entity is now under protective security detail. We will need a new classification." He looked at the creature and gave it a slow, respectful nod. The game was over. Understanding had finally begun. The lab was different now. The air was still, but the old tension was gone. It was replaced by a new, careful feeling. Park Soyoung stood by her office door, her report forgotten on a screen. She watched, her face pale and still. The thing she had called a mindless creature had just beaten her at her own science. It had seen deeper than her machines. Chief Lee Miho gave quiet orders to his security team. The sedation protocol was cancelled. The hazard signs near the enclosure were taken down. No one spoke loudly. It was like they were in a library or a place of respect. Kim Jae-hyun stood near the enclosure glass. He felt tired, but a good tired. The creature was looking at him. Its dark eyes were calm. It made a soft click. Jae-hyun smiled a little. He did not know what to do next. The big fight was over. The creature was safe for now. But what did you do after you proved someone was a person? The creature moved. It walked back to the large screen on the wall. The chessboard was still there, the pieces frozen from the final checkmate. The creature looked at the board, then at Jae-hyun. It raised a claw and pointed at the board. It made a sweeping motion, clearing the pieces away. It wanted a new game. But not the same game. It pointed at its own head, then at the board. Then it began. With careful touches on the screen's controls, it reset the board. But it did not set up the normal starting positions. Placed the pieces in a new arrangement. It put its own black pawns in an advanced line. It placed its knights in the corners. It arranged the white pieces in a defensive circle around the white king. It was a setup Jae-hyun had never seen before. It was not from any human chess book. The creature finished and stepped back. It looked at Jae-hyun. It pointed to the white pieces, then to Jae-hyun. Then it pointed to the black pieces, then to itself. It was inviting him to play, but it was asking him to play its game, its own invention, its opening move. Jae-hyun felt a shiver of wonder. This was the next step. This was not just learning a human language. This was the creature beginning to speak back in its own. He looked at the strange board. He did not understand the strategy yet. It was a first move in a much longer conversation. "Okay," Jae-hyun said softly. He walked to the console Yuna had left open for him. He sat down. He studied the board. The creature watched him, patient and still. Across the room, Soyoung finally moved. She walked slowly to stand beside Miho. She did not look at the creature. She watched Jaehyun, who was already deep in thought about the strange board. "What is he doing?" she asked, her voice quiet. "He's listening," Miho said. Soyoung was silent for a long time. She looked at her hands, then at her useless report on the monitor. She had been so sure. She had seen only what she expected to see. She took a deep breath and walked toward the enclosure. She stopped a few meters away, not too close. She looked at the creature, really looked, for the first time. The creature's eyes shifted from Jaehyun to her. It did not growl. It did not threaten. It simply looked back. Then it gave a slow, slight dip of its head. Not a bow. An acknowledgement. Soyoung's throat felt tight. She gave a small, stiff nod in return. It was not an apology. It was a start. Jaehyun made his first move, advancing a white pawn cautiously. The creature watched, its head tilting. It did not move immediately. It was thinking. This was its game, and it was considering Jaehyun's human response. Miho pulled up a chair and sat near Yuna. "Looks like we're going to be here a while," he said, his voice low. "We'll need to get it a proper board. And a name. We can't just call it the entity anymore." Yuna nodded, a real smile touching her lips for the first time in days. "It should pick its own," she whispered. Jaehyun and the creature played. The game was slow and strange. Jaehyun was learning its new rules as he played. It was difficult, and he knew he would probably lose. But that did not matter. What mattered was the quiet in the room. The soft tap of keys as Jaehyun input a move. The soft click of the creature's claw on the glass as it pointed to its countermove. The hum of the ship. They were talking. Not in words, but in choices. In possibilities. The war was over. The first, fragile piece of peace was here, on a chessboard of 64 squares, between two minds that had finally found a way to meet in the middle. The creature made its next move, a bold knight placement that made Jaehyun sit back and rub his chin. He was confused, but he was interested. He was engaged. He looked up at the creature and saw its eyes were bright, focused. It was engaged too. The real work, the good work, had finally begun.